Hello, everybody. I'm so very excited to be here today with Stephanie Vogel from the Vermont Agency of Education, who will be presenting a breakout session at the 2025 NIOPA conference. Her session is titled Building Multilingual EL Programs in Rural Areas, a multi-level collaboration between the University of Vermont, the Vermont Agency of Education, and Essex Westford School District. So as we prepare to head to Atlanta for the 2025 NIOPA conference, Stephanie, what would you like our audience to know about you and your journey to this work?
Great. Thank you so much for the question, and thank you so much for having me on the podcast. The first thing that I want to say about this work and this presentation that I'm doing is the work is primarily based on the work of a colleague of mine, Tamara Eckloff. She is the Multilingual Programs Director in Essex Westford School District, and she's also a doctoral candidate at the University of Vermont. So unfortunately, she's unable to attend the conference. And I have presented some of this work with her before, but I don't want to forget to give her credit for the great work that she's doing. I am the Title III and EL Programs Director at the Vermont Agency of Education, and I'm also the Vice President of NIOPA. I got into this work shortly after COVID, and when I got into my role, my predecessor had vacated the position for over a year. So I started out with very little information and training about the Vermont context and what to expect. And so some of this work came out actually of my lack of understanding of the role in the Vermont context, because there wasn't a handover at all in the work that was done. So Vermont's context is a little bit unusual. We have the lowest number of EL students in the country. There are only 3 states that receive the small state minimum federal funding for English learners, and Vermont is one of them. Wyoming and Montana are the other 2, but Vermont has the lowest EL count of all of those, so we are the lowest. And this creates a lot of issues, as you can imagine. So our total EL population in the state is 1,900 students, right around 1,900 students. And most of them have traditionally been located in one county, Chittenden County, where Burlington is, which is the city most people know. But over the last several years, the population has been moving more and more rurally. And we actually have had 2 or 3 districts this year report having ELs for the first time ever. And 22% of our districts have 5 or fewer students in the entire district. So this creates a unique set of challenges that we were hoping to address with some of the work that Tamara was doing. So what we noticed or found out is that most of the districts had no plan in place for multilingual learners. They had maybe a 0.2 trained educator working with these students, driving around giant plots of Vermont territory, visiting schools, and students not getting a lot of support, and a real lack of understanding in the administration of these districts about what was needed and how to help support. So the work that I'm presenting at the NALPA conference is work that came out of that kind of background.
That's amazing. So as I was listening, I was thinking our professional paths have several little connections. One, I served as the Title III director at the Iowa Department of Education, and there was a gap between my predecessor and myself too. And so
Mm-hmm.
it is that experience of walking into something and sort of just like opening up the cabinets and trying to figure out, what was going on before I got here, right? So I've had
Right.
that experience, and I think sometimes there might be some positives to that, right? Because you don't necessarily just take over exactly what was happening and then just continue to do things the same way. It's like this challenge of looking at change, because you really have to think about what's going to work here, and I don't really have anything I'm just going to be able to grab onto, right? So I think maybe to your point, it's not always a bad thing when we
Mm-hmm.
don't have like the roadmap completely set for us when we take on a new position. So I love that we both had that experience, even though it probably was a very difficult and challenging and sometimes frightening experience. And then I also keyed in on the fact that your current role, you said at NIALPA is, did you say president-elect or vice president?
Vice president.
Okay, so I also served as vice president, but I want to just give you a little hint. Many times you go from that role to president-elect, so don't be
Yes.
surprised if you're heading into the president's role. And I really so much enjoyed my leadership at NIALPA when I was there, and when I was the president, it was just the most amazing experience to really be able to continue to grow partnerships, and it was just a lot of fun because NIALPA has really grown and has really served just an amazing support role for our state education agency, and also now our local education agency folks. So,
Yeah.
so
I
yeah,
don't think I could have gotten where I've gotten in my role now without the support of NALPA.
yeah.
I received an email, I think on the third day of my job, from a NALPA uh, membership committee member saying, "Welcome to your role, basically. Do you want to join our organization?" And I thought, what better opportunity to help understand the way I should be framing the work that I'm doing than to join this organization for mentorship and professional community,
Yeah.
especially in a state like Vermont where there's one
Mhm.
of me. I don't
Right.
have colleagues.
Yep. And same thing at the State Department when I was in Iowa. It was just one person. There was one Title III director, and there was no team, right?
Yeah.
So when people would ask things and who should I talk to, and I would always say, well, there's three of us, me, myself, and I, and we'll
Yeah.
fight over the office chair. So definitely shared that experience as well. So without giving away all the details about your
Mhm.
presentation, can you give just a little teaser to what NIALPA attendees have to look forward to at your session?
Sure. Tamara has created an amazing tool that districts can use to look at their current program and to figure out what areas need upgrading. And we've presented on this before when the tool was new and we were still developing it, but it's come into fruition and it's been being used for a variety of circumstances in districts across the state. And so I'm presenting not only the tool, which everyone will have a copy of after the presentation, but how different districts and consultants are using the tool, leveraging the tool to help create plans in areas that have never had plans before. And even though the title says building programs in rural areas, I want to make it clear that first of all, this tool would be useful in any context. So it's not just a rural context, but also as a reminder that every state has districts like Vermont. There are rural parts of every state in the country. Um, it's just that Vermont has mostly those, no big ones. So I really hope that people will come to the session to look at the tool and to see the different ways that we've been able to use it to create more equity for English learners in Vermont.
Yeah, and I love that obviously, and like you said, your session is focused somewhat on your context, which is
Mhm.
rural, but also that the tools and the resources that you're going to share, apply across all programs, whether it's
Yeah.
suburban, urban, rural. But when we think about rural schools, they do face unique challenges,
Mhm.
compared to some of our other school districts. When they implement multilingual programs, what do you see as some of the major challenges that rural schools face? And how does this multi-level collaboration that you're implementing help address those challenges?
Mhm. Well, I would say the first challenge is access to resources. So many of these LEAs, our local education agencies, are spread out um, in areas where there aren't large populations of providers of services, first of all. To find an English learner specialist who is able to serve students in these remote areas is very challenging for districts. And even if they can advertise a position, it's often not a full-time position. So people who need more work than that are hesitant to apply for a role like that. Another challenge for our specialists in those districts is that they are often have a sense of isolation because they are often traveling around school to school. They don't have a home base. They don't have colleagues that kind of like me at the state level. So they lack sort of a professional community that can be engaged in dialogue about the work that they're doing. So I'd say those are two challenges. A third challenge I would say is access to translation and interpretation for the families.
Mhm.
Um, that is really challenging in rural areas. And Vermont is also unique in that Spanish is not our most represented language. So while we have a lot of Spanish speakers in Vermont to do translation and interpretation, that does not represent the ability to support many of our students who speak our primary language is Nepali, but also we have Swahili speakers and Somalian refugee population who speak Somali and Mamai. And
Mm.
it's difficult to find translation and interpretation services, particularly in those remote areas.
Yeah.
So, the second part of your question was how does this collaboration help address some of those challenges? And I mean, this is still a situation in flux. I've been in my position for just over 2 years, so we're still really working to build awareness around the requirements for these districts. But I think the primary advantage or the primary outcome that's been really positive from our collaboration is first of all, a community of practice is sort of built organically around providers across the state who are looking for help and support. So Tamara, as part of her work, has put together a multilingual coordinator support group.
Oh,
um,
very nice.
that meets, I believe, every other week. And I have a standing invitation, but I sometimes I like to leave them to it to have an open discussion without someone from the state there. But I do pop in from time to time, and I think that's been a real advantage for that teacher's sense of isolation and also the sharing of resources. It's difficult for the word to spread when there isn't a community of people working together. So I think the building of that community. Also, the tool that has been created is a way also for EL specialists to raise the awareness of requirements to their administrators who don't really understand. And once the tool is being shared, I think people will see what I mean by that. That it does show what are the requirements around serving these students and what are some best practices around that as well. So just kind of raising the profile across the state in those districts who aren't used to having multilingual learners.
That's really wonderful. So when you were talking just about this idea of one of the challenges of, being in a rural school is that isolation component.
Mhm.
I think it's really impactful that you and Tamara have worked together to create a place and a space for that networking because a lot of times, teachers don't even know where to turn. They, without having this connection, being something that's set up for them and they're invited to it, sometimes they don't even know how to start reaching out or who they'd reach
Mhm.
out to. So when the State Department works to help facilitate that, it can really be a game changer. So thanks for supporting that work.
Of course. Yeah, I think I have an advantage in Vermont that we're so small that I can know everybody.
Yeah, that is
Being small, I know
the
everyone.
upside, right? That's the
Yeah.
upside.
Hmm.
So, as I was looking at the session description, in the session description, it just talks about how during your session, you're going to demonstrate how the rubric is being applied in various settings to
Hmm.
create more inclusive and supportive environments for multilingual learners, both the students and the families. So, I wanted to just ask a follow-up question about how is that working in terms of that rubric supporting both learners and their families?
Yeah, I think in a number of ways. The first way is that the tool itself is aligned to the English Learner Toolkit, USED's English Learner Toolkit, which has that chapter on parent and family engagement, the requirements around engaging parents and families. So I think the first thing that tool is doing is raising awareness about the need to engage parents and families of multilingual students in the activity at the district, school district, or school level to engage them. So I think that's one way of engagement. Another way of engaging is for EL specialists to really feel empowered to approach families and to involve families in the education of their children where possible. So I know that in these part-time situations, they don't have a lot of time to be doing outreach and family meetings and visits, but it's a tool that sort of promotes that kind of activity in rural areas. And the other thing is it's sort of helping us advocate for having state level multilingual liaisons. The Office of Racial Equity in Vermont created a language access report and made the suggestion that the state really consider, not just for the Agency of Education, but for the state generally, to have multilingual liaisons who can be bridges between families who are speaking languages other than English and from cultures other than our own, and helping them access public services and the work of all of our agencies. So I think it's another way to kind of raise the profile of the needs of multilingual families in Vermont.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think, the first step to taking action is building awareness. If you don't even know
Mhm.
what you should be doing or sort of what best practice looks like, sounds like, and feels like, how do you even take steps towards that, right? So it sounds like this rubric really helps sort of start the conversation and build that awareness around like what's possible. And then districts can think about how that looks in their own individual context, right?
Yes, definitely. And another amazing thing, I mean, Tamara is really kind of a rock star. Another amazing thing that she's done is create a multilingual family advisory group. So families who are engaged in the community are starting to participate. They run their own meetings and help inform some of the work that we're doing as well.
That's excellent. I love it when we empower our families, and I think that's really important because the more they can own, their child's education and have that comfort level with being an advocate, it just really positions them so much better to support their children.
Absolutely.
So I think my last question for you is really just kind of looking ahead.
Mhm.
When you think about the future, and specifically for rural schools, in your context, how can educators and administrators continue to strengthen this collaboration between the schools, state agencies, as well as universities?
Yeah, I almost hate to put it on the shoulders of the rural schools, and I'd rather like sort of point to the work that I need to be doing at the state
Mhm.
level in terms of raising awareness across the state. ELs are often not considered when professional learnings are provided or guidance is being written around, MTSS or other services that the state provides, guidance the state provides. That the ML piece is often, if not full, completely left out. Not a lot of time is spent thinking about how to engage multilingual learners in those initiatives. So I think really it's incumbent upon me at the agency level to raise awareness about the needs of multilingual learners in the agency itself and across the state. And then to continue to reach out to districts that are struggling to meet the needs of multilingual learners and helping them feel comfortable coming to me with their concerns so that I can continue to rah, rah, rah from the state level to
Yeah.
try to make things happen. I'm a bit of a rabble rouser, I won't lie about it. And the more I hear about the issues districts are having, the more fired up I get to rabble rouse further.
You just need a reason.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. This was such an insightful conversation. I am also very much looking forward to seeing you in person at the conference in
Mhm.
February. And I just
Right,
want to,
Atlanta in February,
Atlanta,
or
that's
Vermont
right.
in February. I'm excited to be in Hotlanta in
Yes, and
February.
coming from Iowa, it's going to
Yeah.
be a drastic temperature shift as well in February. So I want to say thank you to everyone who's watching or listening, and just remind all of our listeners to please keep following and learning alongside all of us at NIELPA.
Thank you so much for having me, and I hope to see all of you at NALPA.